Hi, friends. If you're watching this in real time, there's a good chance you probably know me personally and have tuned in to see what next project I'm working on. And gosh, I can't tell you what that means to me. I know several of you, however small in number, 2,000 people who consistently show up for me and for whatever creative moodlings I take on. And that really does a number in a person's heart to know that even just a few people are committed to watching them try new things, do hard things, and grow. So thank you. And this project is going to be different. It's going to be unlike anything I have ever done before. And frankly, it terrifies me in a way. I avoided this because, as you see, I'm sitting here alone. In my previous projects, I had a team of people behind me. I had an assignment attached to it. We had a format that we agreed upon, and it wasn't just me. And I knew in my guts 9 months ago, before we even started that project, that I was being called to do this one. And I was going to need to use this format, which I learned through that project, in order to get these stories out to people. But it's really uncomfortable to do these kinds of things and expose yourself in a way alone. I really didn't want to do it wrong, and I didn't want to confuse God's voice for my voice or just fall prey to self-exhibition and ego. I don't want a microphone, but I feel like God is asking me to use a microphone. So I thank you for your grace as I show up a bundle of nerves today. And to jump forward a little bit, the plan, the vision, the hope is that this will be a project in which I return to interviewing incredibly powerful, creative, interesting people, musicians and actors and filmmakers, the people that you may or may not already know well, and that we get to dig into the core of this, which is true stories, real life lived experiences of radical grace and unfathomable genius. When I was talking about how more than a year ago I had this vision deposited into my heart, I had been spending a great deal of time in private, kind of alone, communicating with God. I had lived through something which we will get into more in the latter part of this episode. And I was being filled up, I was being healed, I was being transformed in secret. And over that 9 months to a year, while I was delaying what I thought I was being asked to do, I had at least 5 close friends, people that I knew dearly, knew deeply, but maybe had fallen out of touch with or hadn't spoken to in a while. I had many of them connect with me and tell me how done with this life they were. I had them tell me how much it hurt, how much they had lost hope, and I am just sick of it. I'm so sick of the darkness that has engulfed us for so long. And I understand that darkness because I was in that exact same place that those people were in very recently. And that's how we're going to start this today. Is we're going to hopefully I get my bearings, and we're going to just dig into my lived experience as kind of an initial offering to you, that if you're hurt, if your church hurt, or if you've ever experienced the love of God in any capacity, this show is for you. If you're none of those people, I love you. I'm grateful you're here. I know I'm going to be able to learn something from you, and I really hope you stay. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that recently, like just last week, in the midst of continuing to delay, I felt God press in on me and say that I need you to stop worrying about this. I'm going to provide you with the team and the resources and the guests and the co-host and whatever format or function this is going to need to actually impact people at home. But he said, "You've been given medicine, and there are people that are hurting, so I need you to go and give that medicine to those people." And it reminded me of Moses, when this OG hero of so many different faiths, when he was tasked with going before Pharaoh and balked at the idea because he felt as though he couldn't speak well, that he didn't have elocution to offer, and God just saying, "That's okay. I know you. I know your weaknesses. It's not about you. I'm going to do this through you. So please just be the vessel." So God, I pray that you just show up today, that you use me as your vessel, that you empty me of myself, that you get rid of any ego or self-serving agenda, that you truly just speak the words that anybody listening needs to hear in order to feel seen, in order to feel supported, in order to feel like there is hope found in the truth of what you've revealed. Let this microphone be yours, and let this show be an offering to you, God. Thank you. So, I have more notes, but for now, let's just go back to my story. And we're going to do, I don't know if it's Tarantino or Scorsese, but we're going to do the trick of starting at the end and going back to the beginning. So pretty recently, let's call it Thanksgiving 2023, about a year and a half ago, I was in my bedroom, hopeless and extraordinarily low. I had just experienced a season of about 4 or 5 months of very concerted effort to not only, I guess, disparage my character, but convince me and those that I loved most deeply that I was just not a good person, not a good thing. And what the people in that situation didn't know is that I had become extremely comfortable with believing that about myself. I'd spent at least about a decade of time not realizing how deeply I hated myself and was quick to blame myself. And anytime my phone would ring and I'd see someone's name, I was assuming they were calling to tell me something terrible, that they didn't want to know me anymore, that I had done something wrong. Some of you know what that feels like. And that night, about a year and a half ago, we had just experienced the culmination of that 4 or 5 month season. And without getting into too many details, I remember returning home and just saying, I have nothing left to hope for. Like, I can't hope for a future if I don't even feel like I'm a good enough thing to continue. And I actually had a wonderful neighbor, a true angel, meet me that night in my bed and sit with me because I was empty. And you know that feeling where, like, you don't actually have any interest in ending your life, but you feel like you're already dead, like you're empty, like there's just, like, moving on and getting out of bed actually is too heavy to possibly imagine. And then you feel like if you do, it's just going to continue to set off negative ripple effects around you, and everybody else is better off if you just stay in that bed and you give it up. And that friend of mine happens to be a trauma doctor. And several months later, after this all took place, she confirmed to me that she would have called it a clinical mental breakdown, which is wild because as a woman, born of the 80s and 90s, to me, that term was scary. It was girl interrupted. It was asylum. It was broken. And in the moment she told me that in February, 3 months afterwards, it was freedom, because I realized that it wasn't in my head. Like, it was bad. It had not, it was not just another panic attack or another emotional upheaval. It was a breaking point. And for me in that moment, it was a breakthrough because, as some of you know, I have spent my entire life knowing God. I have spent my entire life claiming to be Christian, knowing that the God of the universe is the love of my life and that I am his creation. But I also spent a great deal of time choosing things and people and allowing the world to diminish me in a way that I had become pretty resistant to the God that I'd known. And that night in my bed, I remember just calling out and saying, God, I can't do this. Like, this is too much. It's too heavy. It's too weighty. And it really, really hurts. And I went to sleep. And then I ended up going home to see my folks for a couple of weeks in Florida. And something had changed because immediately, almost immediately, there was this lightness in my chest. And it wasn't until I experienced have you ever had that before where you only know you're missing something or you had something when it's gone, when you can't feel it anymore, when you don't have access to it anymore? I had no idea that for at least a decade, I had been experiencing such a high level of anxiety and depression and a weight on my chest that had made it, I had grown used to it and comfortable with it. And in some ways, sometimes we even become friends with our misery because it's familiar and it's reliable. But with that time in Florida, I remember, holy cow, is this what breathing feels like? Where is that weight? Where is that heaviness? Where is that constant pain in my throat? The way that it would just feel like I would struggle to even be able to get words out. And I remember experiencing that as a radical healing, as a radical biblical miracle of God, because there was nothing in the earthly realm that I had pursued academically, professionally, holistically, intentionally, that had ever been able to help me lessen that pain or decrease that weight. I even ghost wrote a book that had to do with neuroplasticity and naming your monsters in your head and being able to really right size and reprogram parts of your mind. And if someone's not familiar with it, ghostwriting entails not just capturing the words and the expertise and the protocols and the philosophies of the expert that you're writing for, but it also requires an extensive amount of research in order to flesh out those concepts, in order to understand them beyond what you're given, and in order to really communicate that message clearly. And so even having spent dozens of hours studying neuroplasticity and overcoming trauma and reprogramming the mind and intentionally trying those modalities at home, seeing that the truth on the paper of what it promised was what I wanted, and it didn't work. And I remember that night in November in 2023, I remember not wanting to go on any medication, even though medication is a gift and those that it will serve should absolutely, go about choosing the medicine that's right for them. But for me, I knew that I needed a medicine from God. I needed something from the God of the universe that I had spent my whole life loving. I just didn't feel like I was worthy of it. I genuinely didn't feel like I felt like I had spent too much time away from him to receive that goodness or that grace in that moment. And while the healing, the anxiousness and the depression, while that was removed almost overnight, and that gave me a powerful new lens to look through life. Because as soon as you are out of survival mode, even for a second, even when your baseline is lifted high enough to breathe for a second, it reminds you of what's possible, and it gives you the hope when it comes back to be able to know that you can push through it. Even though that for me was so quick, I still needed to do a lot of work in private to explore my mind, explore my soul and explore all of the clues that I felt that God's left us in this life that point to him and to this healing, to this medicine, to this truth. And so for the last year and a half or so since that night, I have started my days with him, and depending on the work I had on my plate at the time, it would be hours. Sometimes it was just moments. But I had been so radically transformed at like a DNA level, like it was just different, that I just wanted to know him more, and I just wanted to give more, and I just wanted to understand more. And so another funny thing is that I was raised in a very charismatic household. I was born into a church that they speak in tongues and they identify angels and demons in the room. And I've seen so many things in my own life with my own eyes and sometimes in my own body that point to the truth that God exists and that he's a good God. And yet for the last 15 years or so, I've found myself falling in love with so many people who had been hurt in his name and who had all of these reasons and all of these bases for not believing that God either exists or that if he does, that he could be anything close to or resembling good. And I remember grappling with that because in that past year when I was finding myself devouring scripture and being healed with hours and hours of time on the phone with my sister in prayer and craving community that had the same language for God that I had, I was conflicted by why is it that so many of the people that I love, they don't have this language. And not only do they not have it, but they're kind of hurt by it. I remember sitting with a friend of mine halfway through last year on her couch late at night, having shared a little bit of my story, who was raised in the church and who has a belief in God, but who the language of God and the Trinity in the Judeo-Christian faith in the landscape and lens of Jesus, I remember her telling me that my expression and my understanding of God was painful because she knew that language and had never experienced any goodness behind it. And I remember that clicking really hard in my heart. And so as I said at the beginning of this, I knew a long time ago that I was probably going to be sitting here in some capacity having this conversation with you guys, sharing my testimony and just one of the many ways in which I have been radically transformed and radically healed by God in a way that man and the medical mysteries and the scientific facts we have here were not able to do that for me. But that last week when I felt God pressing in on me after having had, like I said, a handful of conversations with people who were just so hurt and were just so done. And my heart was just like, they need this medicine. I received the clarity that this project is for those of you who are hurting. It's going to be a fun time. We're going to have fun, incredible, entertaining stories. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry. But for those of you who are hurting, and especially for those of you who are hurting in any relation to what somebody did to you in the name of God, I want to first apologize so deeply that ever occurred. That is the opposite of God. God is purely good. God is purely on your side. God is pursuing you so fervently in a way that no human person has ever pursued anything before. his bounds and his love and his goodness and his grace so far exceed our human ability to understand it that sometimes we use that as the escape hatch to say it can't possibly be true, because how? But the how and the why are what are so beautiful. I don't want to be a person that loves a God that I can understand, because then that God is just as broken and lowly and human as I am. I want to serve and love and communicate a God whose heart breaks every single time yours does, who hurts whenever he sees you feeling as though you're not worthy. You're so worthy, even if there were no other person in the entire world but you. You would be his entire purpose still. And with that, we are going to have, however this develops, however I am granted favor and the capacity to do so. I've already been very much blessed by my studio partners here to allow me space to be sitting here and having these conversations with you. As I said, we're going to be pursuing musicians, actors, filmmakers, the people who are shaping culture and communicating grace in ways that are so freeing. I don't know what it will look like yet. If I'm granted a co-host, yay, because we all know no one needs any more of my voice than you've already heard. I am here nervously delivering what feels like an offering to the God of the universe for not only the way he radically restored and redeemed and recalibrated my existence, but for the way that I know he's going to do it for you too. So I pray that you can have curiosity. I pray that you can feel safe. I pray that you can communicate directly to me. Send me any questions. Send me any heartbreak. Send me any ideas you have for making this as meaningful as possible, because your stories are the entire reason that I'm here at all. And I'm not here making this for myself. I'm not here, like I said, trying to create a brand or a platform. I have zero interest. I don't even know what the title of this is going to be yet. I'm believing God will reveal that before we release it. But I'm here making this for the teenage girls in my life who look up to me and to my family for an example of how to navigate this world, the ones that I want to spare from some of the heartbreaks that I went through. I'm making this for my beloved best friend who has been plagued by depression and by isolation and by a feeling of numbness for longer than we can count. I am here for my high school brother who spent the last half of his life so deeply tormented by the darkness in his mind, under the false illusion that he was ever meant to fight that battle alone. I'm here for the remarkable woman I re-met at his funeral, who has had the world hurt her so deeply and so repeatedly that she struggles to know that there is any good left in it. I'm here for my old colleague who was looking at a mountain of corporate debt that convinced her she was worth more dead than alive. I am here for every single one of you who has ever felt any minutia amount of the lie that there isn't goodness here, that you're not made of goodness, and that goodness is not seeking you. I'm here for you. So I absolutely want to be hearing from you. I absolutely want to be communicating with you. And I want to be creating something that ultimately can bring light, that can bring God right into the room with you, not a God that culture has made you think is anything other than a best friend, a doctor, a true love, a soulmate. That's the God that I serve, and that's the God that I want to see meet you in your room or in your office or on your phone, wherever you might be potentially viewing this. I'm calling down heaven right now to meet you in that place. And I hope we're able to continue gathering. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so humbled, and I'm so, so grateful because I've spent my whole life being terrified of this. Some of you who saw me on that last project saw truly how nervous I am to be in front of any kind of camera. Obviously, I stumble on my words, and I'm prone to choking up in delivery, but all I've ever wanted to do was to be able to create something that could change even one person's life with the truth of how other people's lives have been changed. So those are the stories we're going to be gathering. This time we're going to be gathering real life lived experiences of those who have witnessed the reality of God in tandem with the glory, the radical, like, unfathomable genius in which he works everything out for good, even that which we can't even possibly imagine could have any good in it. There's always something that comes from it that has good fruit. So thank you for listening thus far. Thank you for trusting me with any amount of your time. Thank you for the grace that you're giving me in whether or not whether or not this is something you're comfortable with. I'm not very comfortable either, but I'm really excited. So I will be sharing more information as things develop. If you want to know the next time an episode will be posted, please go ahead, as you know, and hit a subscribe button. I will also be releasing multiple resources because part of the process of reprogramming my mind over that year was changing what I was watching and changing what I was listening to and changing what I was reading and just switching up all of the inputs that I was taking in. And from that, there's been quite a few bangers and really amazing playlists that I want to make available to all of you. I'll have every resource tagged in the description. I want this to be a community. I want it to be active. I want it to be multidimensional. And I can't wait to get to know more of you along this journey. So thank you again.